So, a big hello and welcome everyone to the 17th episode of the IET India Digital Conversations. The session today has been curated by the Manufacturing Working Group of the IET India Future Tech panel. And today we are not here to discuss about the unforeseen future down the line. We are not going to discuss about what happened 5 years back either. But it's about addressing the current situation for the largest employment generator, the micro, medium, and small enterprises, also known as MSMEs. And hence, like every week, we have an expert panel with us today who work and understand the situation very well and will share valuable insights, not only to answer all of these questions during the session today, but also to take up your questions post the session. I'm Suman Bhaumik, your weekly host, and I lead the events for IT in India. So stay tuned as I welcome Lux to the screen now. And I'm sure, like always, Lux, you have some sleeves and surprises up your sleeves for everyone in attendance today. Over to you, Chief.
Suman, thank you so much and welcome all the panelists. Hi, everyone. Good to be here and good to actually connect with you. We live in interesting times. And I think, if you're actually thinking that here is another session that will actually talk about, what the pandemic has brought about and things like that, not really. We look at it actually, from a pragmatic point of view. Someone mentioned this, right? MSMEs are actually the lifeline of a country. And there's a whole lot of, livelihood that is driven by MSMEs. There are actually, really grave challenges around life and livelihood now. And, there's a whole lot of discussion around, how do we actually get the country back on track? How do we actually get people, working? And unlike in many other sectors, for example, in IT, it is easy to actually work from home or work from anywhere. There's a virtual engagement model that is, possible. But in manufacturing, it's intensely physical. You still have to actually be on the shop floor to really, add any value and actually, drive, real commodities, real tangible things that are there. And there's actually a whole lot of, expert speak, guru speak as we call it, which talks about, the three phases of the curve. You know, the first phase is actually, the response curve, the response phase of the, entire, post-pandemic scenario. The second phase is actually, the recovery phase, and the third phase is the resilience phase. I'll just actually talk a little bit about what these three things mean. Many analysts actually talk about it in different forms, in different avatars, but essentially what they're saying is that, when the whole pandemic thing actually came upon us, many organizations, and I can say for sure because, I work with many organizations, both large and small, they were actually definitely not prepared for it. There's no one single organization that could really stand up and say that, we were extremely well prepared for it. There were actually a lot of business continuity plans that had been put in place, but then the best of business continuity plans were actually laid waste because no one had actually anticipated something like this happening. So typically the response went in actually, ensuring that the people continued to work, the productivity did not dip and things like that. Easier said for many verticals such as, ITES or the knowledge verticals. But very difficult actually when you look at manufacturing. For manufacturing, when a lockdown happened, it was a total lockdown. Except for some peripheral planning activities and things like that, really there was nothing, that could be done if the factory itself was actually not open. So the whole response phase, I guess, actually, was not really anything, for the manufacturing segment. I would actually safely say this. Then let's move to the recover phase. The recover phase is actually when organizations, start actually inching back towards normalcy. They look at really how can I bring in certain amount of normalcy, look at actually how it was, before the pandemic actually struck us. So how do we kind of actually, start looking at productivity and things like that? Then again, you look at manufacturing and they say, hey, how does it actually work for us? I really don't know if I can actually, bring that kind of normalcy or near normalcy actually, in the recover phase also. Let alone the third phase, which is about resilience. How do we actually prevent, something like this happening in the future? We are not even going over there. One of the things in the manufacturing work group, we were discussing continuously, and something that has actually been bothering us is that how are the MSMEs actually getting back to work? How are they really starting work? How are they actually getting, workers back, in action? Are the factories opening up? If the factories are opening up, what's actually the safe way of doing it? How do you actually, practice, social distancing on the shop floor? It's all nice and easy to actually talk about, practicing social distancing. We talk about actually a 6 feet distance, between people. But how do you actually practice that on shop floors, particularly in the micro, small, and medium enterprises where actually people are cheek by jowl? They're shoulder to shoulder, working, and you really can't create that much of a space. There's another aspect, and during a prep discussion that we were having, one of the things the panelist was actually talking about, and we'll quiz them on this today, is the fact that, if indeed, we can find some way of actually, enforcing social distancing, and, we actually go by the government, recommendations. Many governments have actually said that, 33% of the staff can actually, report to work, which means that, one in three will actually, come in. If that is actually happening, how do we ensure that, that will not become the new normal? MSME, ladies and gentlemen, is the lifeblood of the country. It is actually, giving livelihood for many, many people. Now, with India actually is a very, very labor intensive market. There is a lot of livelihood. There are a lot of jobs that are actually there in the MSME segment. Just for a moment, imagine if organizations start actually, getting used to working with lesser people and bringing in automation. What does that actually mean? Is this a double-edged sword? This is another aspect that we'll have to bear in mind. So when we look at actually the classical, response, recovery, and resilience curve, it may not actually hold perfect reflection to what is happening in the other segments. And we felt a very compelling need when the country is actually opening to see, what all we can do. So we've actually aligned the best of the minds that are there, the people who are on the panel, and we'll actually invite more people, from the audience and from the panel, from the audience, and questions from the audience as well. We will really look at, how do we address this issue of, opening up for the MSMEs, particularly the MSMEs. The larger organizations actually have a fair bit of automation. They've already actually, built in a certain level of business continuity planning, and they've got a recovery model in place. But the MSMEs, I believe, is a big question mark. And I would believe the whole aspect of livelihood is staring at us really blankly. While I've actually, painted a somewhat bleak picture, just actually, let's do a pivot around another aspect. There's actually a wonderful sentiment that is actually abuzz now. There's a whole lot of, divestment from China talk that's going on, which means that, there's a whole lot of investments that are actually likely to flow into India. The Honorable Minister for Industries, actually, Shri Nitin Gadkari, has been talking about it. Our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, is actually talking about it. They are actually looking at how can we actually beef up our entire infrastructure to, really be very, very strong on the global stage. So, is that actually really happening? If it is happening, does that mean that, along with actually investment, there will also be, competitors coming in, setting a base over here? How does it actually, help or hinder our own MSMEs? What do we need to do to help them actually build capabilities that are relevant, that actually are result oriented in the scenario that is there? So there's a silver lining by way of actually investments flowing in, but are we ready for it? So that's the reason why we actually hit upon this, wonderful line. It said, "Are you open for business?" Opening a factory is not the same as open for business. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jump in. And I would like to actually, walk you through a journey of quizzing the specialists over here. And I'm completely on your side. I'm on the audience side. Let's actually put, these three gentlemen that we see over here, wizened gentlemen, experienced folks, and actually see what they have got to actually share with us. They're the best brains that you can get in the country in terms of actually, getting MSMEs actually back to work. They have got some really smart, sharp ideas that can actually help us, get back on track and get back on track in a very effective, efficient way. So without much ado, I would like to actually, straight away go to Mr. Dattatreya. Dattatreya, can you share us actually a few views, thoughts that are actually top on your mind? I know you're doing a wonderful job in actually advising MSMEs, the kind of work that you're doing. Just share us actually some thoughts that are actually top on your mind as factories start opening up.
Okay, one part which we've seen now over the last 5 years or 6 years, MSME have gone through several disruptions. Take it demonetization, take it GST, but they align to those disruptions. And I'm very seriously saying, we were working with a company. They make electronic capacitors, and it's a small example. So he said, first thing happened that the technology itself changed. So we moved from LCD to LED. So the whole lines had to be disrupted. Then came demonetization. So our major business was on currency. It went away. Then came in GST. So you have to follow some norms. And then the last was this. I mean, there have been few issues, but and the last one which we are going through. So companies have been very resilient in. So when you say that 3R curve, companies have been responding or resilient to challenges. So one is there is a good hope, and whoever we are now talking to in last 2 months or 3 months, there is certainly there are issues. One part there are challenges, but there is an effort to bring back to normalcy as quickly as possible. Issues have been about getting labor, getting permissions, getting machines on track, getting raw material. So the problem and core is of course the money part, where to raise the fund. But there is a drive, and that drive is keeping them take. And that's something which is a very positive side of the MSME life. I'll put it.
Great views there. I think actually, you kind of set the tone, and we will actually come back to you and discuss a little more. Okay, let's actually now move to Arvind. Arvind, in your role, you actually wear dual hats. You are actually you're doing a whole lot of work that enables MSMEs, but also actually you are industrialist in your own right. So how is it actually shaping up for you? What's top on your mind right now?
Thanks, Lux, and good afternoon to everybody. My suggestion and request would be that we will really have to stop. Sorry, Lux, to say this, but kind of the complete industry, whether it's a large-scale industry or an MNC or an MSME, are still going through this similar kind of issues and problems. And when we actually started discussing with MSME, asking the question, "Are you in a different boat or something?" The guy said, "No, we are all in the same boat. So what works for a large company will work for us, and vice versa." Actually, that was a kind of an opener for us that this pandemic and many other things like internet have been a leveler. And some of the MSMEs are actually now saying that we actually are at a sweet spot. We can compete with the big guys because everybody is in trouble. And who will come out of this would depend on how prepared we are. And and the other guy said that actually as an MSME, as an owner driver, the entire onus is on me. Actually, I'm more driven to come out of this at a faster pace in an innovative way and doing something different than what I was doing before. This is larger organizations will actually take much longer to come out of this because they have a more heavy burden to carry. I was actually very happy to hear that. MSME is, of course, the backbone of the entire Indian industry. But I also heard from the other MSME teams or the CEOs that the time for MSMEs to say that we will remain small and we have something special in that. Probably that time rethinking of that is now required to be done. What Government of India is doing is consolidation of the bank. That's a message to everybody that consolidation would get us the muscle and the power for us to compete, because we are not competing with somebody else in Pune or Chakan or Bangalore. We are competing with everybody and everybody from across the world. So every country is going to go local. They are going to talk about Atmanirbhar. It's not just US talked about it, France talked about it. So everybody is going to be talking about Atmanirbhar in whatever it means in French language. But essentially, that's going to be the thing. So how do we use our internal advantage of being a very large market? And one of the things the Government of India did by stopping the import of right from apps to defense equipment, I think that's a step in the right direction, because that's the only way our MSMEs or even large industries will become competitive, because they need markets and they need internal market. Second thing, MSME said that there has been some kind of a reservation or some kind of a preferential treatment or something like that. That has now to move from MSMEs to Made in India. And as a Made in India product, we are very proud that we beat many of the MNCs when it comes to competition. And that is because we are hungry. That is because we want to, kind of grow. So that's my kind of a take from the MSMEs. So MSMEs are ready to move out. They are ready to think differently. They are ready to consolidate. They may be actually better off taking advantage of the Chinese exits and Japanese ingress into India. I don't know how and when it actually will happen, but the fact that when the defense items were kind of shut off from the import list, you saw 13 to 14% of census going up for these defense-oriented companies. And those are the companies who are going to sustain the market for us. And many MSMEs, like here in Pune, Bharat Forge is a large defense contractor, and many MSMEs are, consolidating with Bharat Forge. So that's going to be a symbiotic relations that we'll have to form. And I think MSMEs are well prepared to do this. Hopefully, the macro environment really allows MSMEs to, put best foot forward. There are financial packages, there are rest of the things, but I don't think that's the topic that we want to discuss.
Yeah, fair. Arvind, I think actually, you hit upon all the right notes. You talked about Atmanirbhar campaign, which is about self-reliance. We talked about actually, going vocal for local, and I think it is actually a global phenomenon. It's not just in India. We'll come back to some of these elements actually in a bit from now. Let's actually have Sanjeev sharing some of his views on really what's top on the mind. Capgemini is actually, enabling a large number of organizations. So, what are your views, Sanjeev?
So if I look at the MSME sector, what I see is that yes, I agree with what Arvind mentioned, that while it is not only MSME but even large industries, they were in the same boat. But I think the ability to respond to such kind of massive crisis was much better with probably a large organization than compared to what MSME have faced. During my interaction with MSME sectors, what I found is that while it has impacted them, it has forced them to rethink about the immediate and their what called midterm future as to what they should do. And that's where there's a clear realization that their over dependency on this manual labor is when there has been a large scale migration of laborers from this region to their hometown, I think, has been impacting them in big way. At the same time, there has been, like, most of them are labor intensive, and we have somewhere MSMEs have avoided deployment of large scale technology. So there's also a realization that they will need to do this deployment of technology, not only for the labor is one part of it, but at the same time, when we talked about the silver lining or the manufacturing facilities coming from now shifting from other low cost countries to India, right? Now, how can they compete with them? You have heard about so many Foxcons and everybody else, Samsung, and investing here. This will give definitely a opportunity for MSME to now provide their raw material to these companies. What's more important, will they be able to compete? Number one. So, will they be able to provide the quality of the product that they are expecting? Will they have the kind of efficiencies in their production so that the cost per product goes down? Will they be able to do mass customization? I think these are the bigger things which are playing on the mind of this MSME. So I think that's where I think it's a blessing in disguise, if I might call it.
Dattatreya, Arvind, Sanjeev, all of you shared your thoughts actually, the top of the mind, in terms of really, what the thought process is. Let's actually look at a practical scenario. A friend of mine who's actually running a small scale industry in Bangalore, I generally chatting up with him, and there's actually a bit of pain, when in the middle of the lockdown, he actually is responsible for about 40-50 people. He's actually responsible for engaging these people. So he says that I can actually manage to pay them a month salary, because these guys are loyal and they've been there with me. But I don't think I'll be able to support them for endless period of time. So I want to actually start opening up, and the regulations actually are what they are. So I felt that perhaps actually this is actually top on the mind now. Arvind, actually the point that you mentioned, whether it's a small organization or a large organization, I think the challenges are the same. Small organizations are nifty, but you have to understand, one of the problems of small organizations is that they may actually have cash flow issues. Even if they know what the solution is, they may not be able to make investments in technology. And if they get caught on to the lure of technology, what happens to the livelihood? Automation can actually eliminate jobs, and I think that's a reality that we need to be looking at. So how do we actually balance this out? The next round of questions that I would like to ask, and we'll actually start with Arvind. Arvind, actually, what are the challenges? Today, let's say, the government lifted the lockdown. In various places that was actually different patterns. And when you talk to the people, they're confused. They really don't know. They don't know how to interpret the regulation. So what are the challenges that are actually there? I want to open the factory tomorrow. What are the things that are top on my mind?
So, but I will just take the point you raised about just running the cash flow or just running the shop. I mean, yes, these are the real problems that pay has to be done. Everything has to be the thing. Government did give some concession and some extension of things on the GST side and all the things. But ultimately, yes, now it's like state governments asking central government to fund them to pay to the doctors and teachers. Where does the central government get the money? So buck has to start somewhere, and I really don't know where that buck will stop. Would a large industry make an advance payment to a small industry saying that you have been a good supplier to us, so once we go back, we'll take 6 months of equipment from you, so here is an advance payment? Would something of that kind happen? Had we been in consortium and kind of a very trusted relationships, I think these kinds of things would have happened. Unluckily, that has not happened. This pandemic actually has thrown us into that frame of mind where we'll have to think about this. A small organization has its problem, big organization has its problem, but things like that. Today, if you read Cisco news, Cisco is about to fire a really large number of people. What it means is that down below, everybody will be impacted. So that's a real problem, and I don't think there are really good solutions to this. People have to figure out how they survive, because when this opening up happens, this survival will be. But if I survive out of this, what are the problems? I mean, when we started this discussion, all of us would say that one thing is we said that if electricity goes, my mic might be switched off or my camera will get switched off. So, are we ever going to be able to come out from these kinds of infrastructural issues? And when Modi government says that we would like to take the infrastructure to the villages, I think those are the kind of pushes the industry is expecting from the government, from the large players, from the local organizations. Today, when I have to travel from Pune to small irritants like this that I can't even cross across to the other district where there is a genuine business waiting for me to happen. People want me. I don't know. So these are the small issues that government will have to really come up and smoothen them out very quickly. Nobody is expecting any large sales, or like US government did what they call as the paycheck protection program, and 2 months of pay for everybody who is paid by the government of the United States. I don't think in India that's really practical, feasible, or even should we ask for it. So we would come out of it, but these irritants have to be removed, and this interpretation of rules and regulations right from state government downwards is so horribly wrong. It just puts people, and in fact, some MSME people have actually come and told us that this is a time a lot of other organizations and regulators are looking for. I also had a lockdown. I didn't make money, so I need to make my money for this last 3 months. So how do I do it? And I was actually told that the demand of about ₹1 crore for letting a factory get restarted. And that's horrible. That's horrible. And I'm sure a lot of people are doing this. A lot of people are hearing about it. So these are the irritants we need to remove as a government, as an organization, as civil society. I don't know who else can step in.
Yeah. Arvind, I think actually you touched upon very, very important aspect. These are real life, on ground challenges. Okay, let's actually move to Dattatraya now. Dattatraya, you hear about it. You actually talk to many MSMEs. Now, I have people come to you saying that, look, actually, I want to open the factory. I don't know. I'm actually a little lost as to what needs to be done.
So actually, it all happened in April when Andhra government first announced the guidelines for starting a factory in Andhra. Andhra was the first state, if I'm correct, and it so happened that one of my friend who is with industry body in Andhra, he sent back the entire note to us, trying to find out whether we can explain that 68-page document. And and there were a lot of permissions required on transport, on physical social distancing, temperature measurement, and things like that. So from there, I think each and every state brought in their own regulations. But let me be very specific to answer. Yes, there has been certain expectations in terms of regulations, especially this temperature measurement, safety issues, the EHS requirement have become more and more stringent. Few large companies could follow that very rigorously. Uh, Smaller companies struggled a lot, and especially, let me tell you, we developed some temperature measurement unit with a small sensor. We doesn't need a security guard to scan the temperature. It came out as a MSME requirement. It's not something. So you just set up a box outside your office, and it measures your temperature. So you don't need a guy also to do that. So point is that these regulations, interpretation of regulations, and whether MSMEs could be supported by us, including Arvind's company, on those challenges. That was the question, and I think yes, there is a question, and we have to respond to that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get into the solution mode. I'm actually trying to establish the challenges that they're actually facing, and I'm sure there are solutions. And the August audience over here are actually looking to us, for some solutions that they can implement it immediately. So we'll come to that in a bit from now. Sanjeev, actually, what are your thoughts in terms of the challenges that organizations are facing, as they start reopening?
So when you look at the challenges, I think Arvind and Dattatraya talked about the various guidelines which are issued by the government when there are lockdowns which are there. And while these lockdowns have created massive disruptions in operation, they have also created a lot of uncertainty and anxiety among the people, among the manufacturers, and more so in the MSME sector. Because similar lockdowns and similar measures to prevent or reduce the COVID-19 infection across the world, what you call, have affected the supply chains and disrupted the manufacturing operations. And second thing is that once this lockdown is lifted, the manufacturers face the manpower shortage due to, as I mentioned earlier, large scale migration of workforce to their hometowns. There was also a sort of what you call there was material shortage, which is there, raw material shortage, and one more factor which is very important is that personal psychology. That is the fear of getting infected. So if I go to the factory, if I work and with the environment which is there, whether I be provided the kind of health and safety guidelines or requirements which are there. So getting infected, fear of getting infected again was a big factor, and it is still a factor. It's not that that factor is gone out; it's still there. And coupled with that, also the lack of confirmed orders, because suddenly the buying behavior of the customer has changed. Lack of those confirmed orders, visibility of the orders from the customer, supply chain, logistic issue. I think everything has come together as a crisis for these people.
Okay. Yes, Sanjeev. I think actually, you brought in perspectives of actually, interpretation, understanding, someone who could actually help them. And I think, industry associations have been actually a little bit laggards when it actually comes to proactively helping them out, right? I mean, that's really what it has been. Arvind talked about the ecosystem that could actually help, So maybe I think, there's actually a lot to be done. But I guess actually the challenges, I believe, are, very clearly laid out, regulation challenges. How do you actually, ensure that there is a right interpretation of whatever is the regulation? I can't imagine actually, smaller organizations trying to understand the 68-page document that Dattatraya talked about and, actually understanding it and implementing it fully. So, which means that, I'll put it across mildly, it means that there is actually a possibility of regulation abuse happening, which means that, people will interpret it the way it'll actually be advantageous to them. And actually, the enforcers will look at, the other side or turn a blind eye to it. And I think, it's important for us to know that regulation is not for the sake of regulation. The pandemic, we've actually, seen it, heard it, is actually something that is really damning. It's actually a lot of doom and gloom that you hear actually everywhere. If that is the case, and, if factories are opening up, I believe that there is actually a tremendous amount of challenge actually for organizations. I think workers are actually coming back, but then there is a life threat that is there. The possibilities of infection are actually going up because I guess, eventually, if there's no enforcement, if there is no awareness, if people just want to actually, open their setup, just for the livelihood, then there's going to be a bit of a challenge. This actually, now move towards uh, areas that could perhaps actually help. But before that, I have a very wonderful question that's actually come up. Based on a comment that I made earlier on. So we've actually got, Vimal. Vimal says that automation doesn't necessarily impact jobs. There has to be continuous effort and an enabling environment for upskilling people. Absolutely, Vimal. I think you actually have made a good point. In fact, it's almost like I see myself talking that lingo all the time with our clients. We talk about automation and enabling and stuff like that. I was bringing about actually the very, very fine nuance of people who are actually, brown collar skilled folks. Automation might actually, and create a lot of jobs which are actually upstream jobs or actually up the value chain jobs. But the guy who's actually, really using his hands and legs, working on the shop floor, in the interim, there's actually going to be a bit of a challenge over there. And these are actually, typically folks who are not really very well to do. And I think actually it was Sanjeev who made the point that, with the mass exodus of laborers, across the country to their hometowns, we also actually have a skill problem actually at, site.
But I think Lux, we could also, at this point of time, so anybody from the audience who is an
Oh, yeah.
MSME who is facing these kind of challenges and crisis, if any of you would want to come to the stage and share few excerpts from this experience, you can raise a hand, and we could get you onto the stage so that you could share your insights with us briefly.
I'm an odd man out here. I'm a doctor. I know most of you are basically business leaders and engineers and all that. So I was specifically interested in IET because a lot of stuff that I've actually been attending almost all the webinars. Quite interesting. I must thank Suman for that. And I stopped practicing. I'm an anesthetist intensivist. Stopped practicing more than 5 years ago. Stopped practiced it for more than 3 decades. So I am now fully into administration for the last 6 years. I'm running a group of my own people, anesthetists and come intensivists, who are about 170 in number, covering 30 centers, including 20 in Hyderabad, about 6 in Bangalore, and 1 in Raipur, about 4 in Chennai. So we are also a registered MSME, and this is completely new to me, honestly. And I got it registered. I know all the benefits and everything, and I'm not really sure how to kind of leverage my company, which is registered as MSME. I'll take a couple of more minutes, Suman, if you don't mind. Typically, what happens is we serve the services of anesthesia and intensive care are outsourced to us by the hospitals, and they pay us after a month. That's 1 month lag. And as you know, in India, especially healthcare industry, this is not transparent. I'm being a doctor. I'm being very honest with you, and they don't pay us for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. While we as an organization always make sure 20 years now in the industry, we have not crossed 7th of every month to pay salaries to our associates, even in these difficult periods. So obviously there is a lot of stress on us. Could you please advise us how to actually get over this difficult situation so that we continue to manage our ethos and morals, and then our commitment to our associates. Maybe it's a big thing, but just some tips would help us from you experts.
No, I think Dr. Murthy, wonderful point that you made, and I guess actually, this is the cash flows are actually what they are now. All organizations are actually clamping down on any capex expenditure, and even actually opex expenditure is under a fair bit of stress. That's because when the pandemic actually hit, the business most businesses actually kind of started showing a downward dip. because offices were not open and things like that. But I would reckon actually a large part of it is, really, particularly in the field that you mentioned, a lot of it has actually got to do with the ecosystem. While you actually are driven by ethics and values to, ensure that, the people who are working with you are actually paid in time because they've got actually families to support and things like that. Sometimes actually, people take undue advantage of a pandemic and actually, want to really, push the credit limits to whatever degree. In fact, I've actually had, some real indecent proposals coming in from some clients who I don't want to name obviously here, asking for 1 year. They're what they're saying is that I think it'll actually take at least 6-7 months or so, and we need to actually recover. And therefore, when our cash is actually fixed, then we'll actually pay you. But then the service is actually being rendered. We need to provide service of the highest degree, so there is no compromise on the service quality or responsiveness. But there is actually a tremendous amount of requests coming in to actually clamp down on the cash outflow. So I think there is no easy answer to this. Part of it is regulation, part of it is actually the ecosystem values or actually the associations that can actually kick in. IET can actually bring in awareness into this issue by working on this. I think that's actually a very important meaty subject that you gave us for our deliberations. And at some point of time, Dr. Murthy, we will actually try and invite you as a guest participant in some of our deliberations on the manufacturing working group, where we would like you to actually suggest some ways, and we'll figure out actually something that we can send out as recommendation that can be provided. At the end of the day, I think there's always going to be actually gold diggers, people who will actually take advantage of a scenario like this, and we need to probably actually fall back on regulation and support to kind of actually bring in certain values and let's call it actually an humanitarian approach to the whole thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Murthy. These are real problems and real on-ground challenges, and thanks for bringing it up. It'll give us actually a topic for us to actually discuss on. So I think when we really look at, these are practical challenges, ladies and gentlemen. What we are facing now is some of these challenges, right? There's always actually, a segment that wants to make a quick buck, in the situation that is actually in. Even when their cash flows are not affected, people want to take advantage and things like that. I mean, like I said, we've actually had, these indecent proposals coming to us as well, where people actually asked for 1 year. And the refrain was, believe it or not, the refrain was actually, even the banks are actually, offering EMI moratoriums and stuff like that. But seldom people realize that, you'll end up paying more because when you actually go in for a moratorium, it means that actually, the cost of money is going to really go up as actually the bank is already funded you. So those are actually unreal examples or things that are actually basically knee jerk, if I can use that phrase. Professor Bhattacharya actually says that for the immediate recovery there cannot be any alternative than agility and the willingness to go ahead with the cooperation of stakeholders, including taking care of health. Very, very good point. I'll come back to that with the panelists. I'll quiz the panelists on this. For resilience, can we think of clusters where one can help one another? It's basically community at play. It's community at work. Let's ask the panelists, the seasoned veterans over here, does that really happen? Can it actually be made to work? And how can we actually program manage the whole thing? We can make clusters of large companies like Tata's and MSMEs attached to them to help each other with knowledge and finance. Great points there. So let's actually go over to Dattatreya. So Dattatreya, actually wonderful suggestions. Is it feasible? Is there actually that much of trust that is there between organizations, people who actually have the ability and people who need to help each other? Arvind, your thoughts?
This looks like a nice and doable idea on a piece of paper, and I wish that was the reality. But it's far from the truth for two simple reasons. One is that the trust factor is terribly lacking in the Indian entrepreneurs when it comes to payment, when it comes to quality, when it comes to just sharing information and things like that. People are always saying that if I have to give something, is it regulation required that I have to share this information with you? Not because it's that what I want to do. So, though it's a great idea, I don't think it will take off so soon. However, the time for this has to come, and how it will move, I don't know. Wherever there are commonalities and common interests, people will come together, and that will happen. Something like a center of excellence have come up. In Pune, we have an electronic cluster where there are shared facilities for testing, because not every electronic manufacturer needs the same testing chamber. So those kind of a sharing things have started, but it is far from where we should be. And one of the reasons why MSCBs are not able to compete globally is because of these issues. Also on the certification side, if I have to get a CE certificate for my electronic product, it's an expensive thing if I have to export to Europe. We don't have Indian way of certifying products. So that's a lot of thing infrastructurally government can do to make this competitive but collaborative efforts, take shape. In terms of things like health management and things like that. Now today, government regulates a lot of things that there should be health checkup, there should be a doctor, and these things. These are completely cluster-based approaches that can be done. Would people do that? Again, I do not know. So we have a solution which lets people do social distancing in shops and factories and offices and hospitals. But we haven't seen much good response from the industry because industries are quite not sure whether this enforcement will happen. So that's another factor that if there is no enforcement, the regulations don't work. I think unless all of us as a country, as a culturally, we don't come out of it, I think government is doing a lot in this. They're saying that trust your people. That's how the income tax assessment has started. Faceless income tax assessment has started. So unless those kinds of things start from the top and from the bottom and from everywhere else, I think though great idea, looks good, but I have my
I I may probably want to add to that. I think if you have to look from the positive side of the thing, right? And if I look at the history of the country which was most affected, which started all this thing, right? The COVID thing, China. And I used to read about how they are trying to recover fast compared to what we are now, because they started opening way back in March and April itself, probably around first week of April, or second week of April, they started opening up. They faced a lot of challenges at the same time. I think there again, the companies came together. Everybody's supply chain was disrupted. They were broken. I think that was a time when they could come together, look at what can be combined together and can be what you call ordered so that they can at least do some minimum manufacturing and continue and keep the lights on. I think this is a good suggestion. As a organization, we should try to give a positive push to this entire thing. Look at what can be done so that because a large organization can always manage somehow. I think MSME is a sector which has which is providing so much of output, manufacturing output. But if they get impacted, and they probably have lesser, resistance to sharing information and sharing other things. I think we should create a platform for them, and that will definitely work in favor of MSME.
Good, Sanjeev. Actually, thanks for chiming in. And Dattatreya, you're back now. In fact, actually, when you dropped off, Arvind actually set the stage for a cooperative engagement that you are driving. Your Center of Excellence is actually providing an opportunity for organizations that may not have the ability, but can actually come in for IP, for actually understanding processes, for understanding technology and things like that. Can you just actually elaborate a little bit, articulate a little bit about your platform?
Okay, just your previous question also. There are few OEMs like Mahindra's. They've done some bit from their side about disruptions in supply chain, and especially they have worked very closely with suppliers on this EHS platform, which is good. It's a good first step. I'll put it this way. A lot can be done. But there are few companies which have done something, few haven't done. I mean, they have left it like if you want to do business with us, you have to understand and start working. I mean, that's also another stand. Coming back to our work which we are doing, we are essentially trying to support industry and especially MSMEs. One on bringing them on a technology platform where they can understand and appreciate we are working more on our applications rather than core technology itself. So how technology can be taken to how Industry 4 can be brought into our shop floor, and that's what we are working on. We have developed some very simple tools, and we have a team of engineers who does right from plastics to foundry forging units across India, and so that's how we try and understand their pain areas and support them. Parallel, we are also building an ecosystem of startups and suppliers in hardware and software domain. So that's what it's a national program, as a follow-up of Make in India. It's a program called Samarth Udyog, under which we are working.
Yeah, and you want to actually elaborate on Samarth? Not everybody knows about Samarth.
Yeah, Samarth stands for, it's not a Sanskrit word, Samarth, it stands for
Acronym, yeah.
Smart and Advanced Manufacturing and Rapid Transformation Hub. Government wants our companies, especially manufacturing, bring in smart technologies. That is the first step, and we need to rapidly transform ourselves. There is no time now left for us to compete in the market, and Udyog is an industry, so that is where Samartha Udyog stands for.
Yeah. Smart and Advanced Manufacturing Rapid Transformation Hub. Wonderful, great initiative. And I think these are the kind of programs that are being given wings by gentlemen like Dattatreya. So I think what we can do is people actually on the call, if they want to reach out to you, they should be able to do that, right, Dattatreya? I mean, they can drop a mail and visit your website and things like that.
Yes.
Okay, let's actually go back to the discussion we were having. In fact, let's go back to the story of the lockdown actually lifted, the factory had to be opened. We figured out actually the regulations. We somehow managed to understand all of that. And then we realized that, hey, factory can be opened. Let's actually open the factory 15 days later. If we set a time, and then what actually happens? You went, got the regulations signed off, everything is actually done. Coming back to you, Suman, I'll just actually now explain this and come back. And then, you open the factory, but only to realize that, folks who are actually who are working in the factory, the skilled hands, they were all actually, done a mass exodus. They were all actually gone back to their hometowns and they're refusing to come back. There is actually some interesting stories. I can't actually, this is all hearsay. I don't know if it is true or not, but I've actually, I heard about actually some of the real estate guys, getting folks on a flight, from wherever their hometowns are actually to come and work on sites because the projects are actually stuck. Labor, big problem, but labor, I think, is actually one of the big problems. So, what do we do about that? That's right. Arvind, what are you advising, to folks? And Sanjeev, you can chime in with your thoughts from best practices. Actually, you talked about the China best practice. So, how do we actually address that gap? Is automation an answer, or is it actually better regulations and finally pay for play, which is actually pay parity that will actually in some sense it's actually also a correction that is coming in terms of whether people are getting paid for whatever they're worth. What are your thoughts?
Two things are there. One part is that there is a limit to which the number of people can come in. So we started with 33%, and then moving up now we are close to about 50% of the total staff. Naturally, owner or a senior guy would like to have people who are touching machines coming in more than supervising or managing the business. And probably, and because you can't have work from home for a machine machine operator, so he'll have to come to a factory. So there was a constant need that how do we manage these operations without supervisors coming into a shop floor. And so issues like material lying all over. How do I pick up material? How do I get inventory? Because inventory, it suddenly abruptly stopped the factories. So you had unbalanced inventory. So the challenges were of a different nature. And about manpower especially, now there is a realization that we can manage shops with less supervised staff.
Yeah.
And that is a bigger employment issue which is going to come in the coming work. And to do that, if I can bring in some technology, or if I can manage on its own, is fine. I mean, that's the way things are. Because ultimately, MSME has to survive itself before employing people. Second part which came in was MSME having people operating out of home, passing through a COVID situation. That also had impacted operations. And when you have suddenly 30, 40 people getting affected in a factory area, so that was a second challenge. So you have to have a complete shutdown of a factory for 10 days again. and again getting back to normal. So those type of problems came up quite significantly.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I think actually, good, valid, very valid points. And see, I think, and I'll come to you, Arvind, actually, after kind of actually setting a context around this. While there is actually a race to open up the factories and all that, the responsibility of the safety of the employee, the well-being of the employee, and eventually the life of the employee or the worker is actually with the owner. So, how do we actually ensure that safe hygienic practices are followed? One part of it is actually the thermometer, which we talked about. I think, most organizations are following it. There are also actually, voluntary declaration, there is a Arogya app, all of those things are there. But that actually does not rule out, someone who is unwittingly or willfully actually, coming in, knowing pretty well he or she is infected, and that will actually carry a very grave risk. So how do we actually enforce this? Let's call it actually social distancing on the shop floor. Arvind, can I actually come to you for your thoughts before we move to Sanjeev?
Health is, of course, the individual responsibility, and the organization need to enable that responsibility can be met. And the responsibility of an individual is not only for himself but also to his family, because half the time is in at home and half the time in the factory. So the enablement is a very important part that the organization has to do. There are some specifications on this. People have been careless, and I'm sure if you see videos coming from Kolkata, the social distancing is only on the paper. If the same culture goes back into the factory, I don't think it's really right to make a CEO responsible. There are actually a case here in Pune where the CEO has been booked. I think he went into jail for a day and then luckily came out. But to book a CEO because people crowded in a canteen, I think it's stretching it too far. And if these kinds of things start happening, people are going to be a little scared and of this witch hunting. So the responsibility needs to be shared by the CEO, by the factory manager, by the employees themselves, and there should be tools available which let them do that. I'm not talking of a solution, I'm not here for selling it, but there are solutions which allow people to not only recommend but also enforce social distancing, whether in the office or on the shop floor, etc. And anybody who flouts these norms or instructions can be taken up and put to task. There needs to be change in the way HR processes work, that if anybody flouted or seem to be flouting these instructions, he should be fired immediately. Those kind of harsh measures is something that will make people aware of it. Indians, as a rule, are really not very careful people. I'm sorry to say that. Again, I'm saying this from the social distancing, the way we follow it on the streets and the malls. But unless this enforcement, unless this responsibility starts sinking in, I think we're going to have trouble. And this factory shutting for a while and then starting again, then shut down for 10 days, I don't think that's a very positive sign to give out to the market. And then we are expecting others to invest into my company. I think that's not going to work. So there has to be a system-driven approach for enforcing this health norms and things like that. Scare factor or fear factor needs to be taken out of this. Some of the fear factor has made people do something, but that's short-sighted and that's not going to be sustained. So we have to take out the fear factor. We have to enable this, enforce this, but enablement is going to be very, very important. There are ways and means of doing it. Maybe this is not a forum to discuss that, but it is all possible.
Okay. Sanjeev, actually, no. Yeah, thanks, Arvind. Sanjeev, your thoughts on, on this aspect,
Yeah.
how do we actually, is there some best practices that you want to bring
No, I
forward?
would like to extend what Arvind said. Basically, there are several inexpensive technology options like IoT and other things which support the manufacturers in their what we call following all those norms which are there. So one option leverages your infrared sensors that monitor the workers present at a specified spot. And with the analytics of all those being provided to match to observe whether they are following the enterprise policy compliance, and also at the same time making it anonymous so that they preserve the privacy also of that person. Other technology, if you want to know, is about the Bluetooth Low Energy, or as we call it BLE. There are beacons or the worker badges, in addition to the smartphone, the Arogya Setu application that we use. So with this data that comes to these inexperienced technologies, and then the application of artificial intelligence that can analyze the distance between colleagues in real time, and if you are exceeding the thresholds, the signal is sent, and with this the manager will be able to see who is violating the policy and other things. And also, uh, this helps you, for example, if there's some accident or suddenly you see a lot of people gathering at a workplace, then the manager will also know, or the person who is administering, who's trying to supervise this will also know that something suddenly has happened there, so he can pay attention to that as well. So basically, depending on those admission requirements, all these analytics may be either completely anonymous, or probably if the people sign for that, they can share the name and other things, details, then that can be made possible.
Yeah, let me just chime in further on the thought that on the point you made. In fact, actually, today technology, I think if there is awareness, I think the first fundamental step is actually about the awareness of the people to actually protect themselves. And I guess there is actually a fair bit of stigma and fear factor that is there. In some sense, actually, the fear factor in itself will, ensure that people are taking care of themselves. Now, how do we know what's a safe distance or not? One part of it is actually the regulating, which we've talked about. There's another element, where some of the solutions that we as NTT are doing are, this is a bracelet, a simple bracelet, or actually a small coin-sized, pendant. And when the worker actually comes too close to each other, there is a friendly beep that goes off, where they're actually, it's an alert for people to step back. While we'll actually, be pulling in analytics, and we'll see what's happening and who are actually, regular violators or actually, habitual offenders. But still, you're giving an opportunity for the people to move away from each other because they're too close. So in some sense, it's actually building some level of awareness and things like that as part of this whole engagement of practicing social distancing on the shop floor. So there are some things, I'll stitch them all together in a bit from now. But someone, are there any questions that actually, are there? Is there someone who wants to come on stage and ask a question, from our attendees?
We have one such thing which is coming to the chat section from Mr. Indrajit Chatterjee. He said that though we follow, or we may follow social distancing within the shop floor, within the factory, there is significant amount of risk when you are letting people travel to and fro from the factory and their home, because the public transportation system necessarily doesn't take care of these things. So how do we, solve those kind of issues within the factory, or so that taking care of the workers, so that the infections don't spread?
Yeah. There are no easy answers actually, and Mr. Rajat, I think you raise a very, very valid point. I think that's actually the talk of the town also. Public transportation, I think, is actually really the highway to super spreading. You have confined space, and people actually are so close and breathing into each other, particularly in places like India with the crowding that we have. So it's always going to be very, very difficult. So for enforcing social distancing on the shop floor may actually come to nothing if the commute itself is actually hazardous. So like I said, actually there's no many transport companies I know for sure are actually following certain aspects, alternate seating and things like that. The jury is still out. People are actually still understanding how the virus actually spreads rapidly, and how it is actually getting into people's systems and all that. So until then, I guess there is actually, we'll have to follow whatever the experts are actually saying. So we don't have a choice. We really don't know. It also is applicable to the Uber and all the mass transportation industry. So if the driver is actually barely 3 feet away from you, even if you sit in the back seat, how do you ensure that this is what it is? So it comes back to the fundamental aspect, which is actually masking yourself. I think it's generic. It is not related to MSME, but if people actually follow basics, if people actually ensure that they maintain distance as much as possible, they're actually using a proper mask, and they're ensuring that folks who are actually seen or actually experiencing positive symptoms, they stay away and actually do not infect people. I think so by and large it gets done across the board. I think there needs to be an awareness, and it's actually, like I said, it's a generic issue and not really related to MSMEs per se. So, but it's a good point. Thanks for actually bringing it up. So let's actually, now come back, I'll try to stitch everything together and go back to all the panelists, for their views. First, we said that, the factories have to open. I think that's a given. I think when a question of livelihood is there and people need to actually, earn their bread, put actually food on the table for their families, they need to actually be going back to work. That's a given. If that is a given, then how do we actually make things work? What we heard from the experts today are multiple aspects. I think there are actually several areas of best practices, competence, and all that that's being followed. Let me string all of that together from whatever we heard so far. First aspect is that follow the regulation. There is actually a fair bit of thinking that's gone into the regulation. It may be a very, very complex document, and we need to see how we can kind of simplify it. And IIT, the manufacturing working group, Purnendu, you are there. I'll actually invite you later for your thoughts on this. We will actually look at how can we have a very simplified, easy to follow document for the MSMEs to actually ensure that they understand, and it is not, they don't get browbeaten by all the legalese that comes into these kind of documents. So follow the regulation. That's actually number one, the first thing that we heard. The second thing that we heard is that there is actually strength in community. While people actually can compete with each other, but this is the time when organizations of the same ilk actually need to work together. There is actually a lot of strength in cooperating. There's a lot of strength in sharing. Communities need to actually form, irrespective of whether the government is actually blessing that or not. Here is where again IIT could actually play a very pivotal role in making sure that we have a platform where people actually can learn and then put things into perspective. So the power of the community is what I will actually broadly capture this as. The third element that we learned is supply chains are broken everywhere, and going vocal for local has to have a lot of meaning beyond just being a slogan, which technically means that get the supply chains actually up and running quickly. Now is the time where you can't actually go very, very refined versions, or कि ये 10 साल से काम कर रहा था ऐसे ही चलना चाहिए. Maybe actually that may not work. Let's be innovative and look at what actually localized supply chains can actually do as a magic. We've got organizations actually such as what Mr. Dattatreya is representing, C4I4 Labs. They actually act as a melting pot, a catalyst for sharing of best practices, for advising and guiding people. So let's leverage all of that, and including actually what IIT Manufacturing Working Group is doing. And the fifth element is that let us not actually ignore, for those of you who are on the call who are running your industries or actually in a position of influence to talk to your managers or bosses, please let them know that opening of the factory comes in with the accountability. With great power comes with great responsibility. And I'm borrowing actually the dialogue from Spider-Man. It is absolutely incumbent and it is accountable on the owner, the proprietor, or the chief of that organization to ensure that there is safety on the shop floor. Use simple technology tools. Technology need not always be very expensive. Technology tools are actually extremely reasonable. Sanjeev spoke about it. I chimed in. But technology is actually feasible. You'll be pleasantly surprised, ladies and gentlemen, to see how technology can actually provide you with the comfort of enforcing or ensuring there is social distancing on the shop floor. And last but not the least is actually how do we bring in how do we ensure that regulate by regulation the labor, the people who are actually working are provided the rightful due, either through actually organizations such as ours influencing them, or actually bringing in awareness to the people who are running these organizations, that eventually they are responsible. Because if you don't have labor, you can actually have a fancy factory and follow shop floor social distancing and all that, but it'll come to naught because you will not be able to find skilled labor because they've all gone back to their hometowns, and it's actually becoming very difficult to lure them back. So these are difficult situations that are there. So I kind of actually stitched together some of these thoughts that are there. All are very simple, easy to follow, and nothing really earth moving. We are not waiting for anyone to come in and actually change anything over here. These are things that we can actually do ourselves. So I would like to now invite Sanjeev to share some views around this. I just kind of actually brought everything together. So Sanjeev, your thoughts here?
So, Lux, what I found is when I was talking to some of my colleagues who are into MSME sector and manufacturing sector, you use the word awareness. I think the awareness of availability of these inexpensive technologies is not there. I think while they may have all the written instructions from the government about the safety procedures and everything else, how can they deploy this small portion, small and inexpensive technology so that they can work towards the larger health and safety concerns of the employees to war away their concerns? I think is not there. Somewhere there has to be also initiative about making them aware that these are the technologies which are available next to you. So because they are not even a thought of going outside, because for them the first and the foremost task was to to get the manpower and start and try to see how they can start the industry. So while they were all trying to look into these factors like 6 feet distancing, blah blah, and other thing, but they were never thought that they can ease up their operations, they can ease up their work by just putting a deploying a small blue eye, for example. We have some products called blue eye that can be deployed in a factory, which can give these alerts for people who are coming together. Very inexpensive too. So that awareness is very, very important in addition to all the regulations that we do. That is my point of view.
Absolutely, Sanjeev. And I'm tempted to say something here. Folks, actually, the kind of technologies that we are talking about here will actually be less than, and I repeat, it will be less than the cost of coffee and tea that you actually serve to the employee every month. Whatever it takes for you to actually supply coffee and tea, which is actually a given as a, it's a privilege that is actually being provided, right? Some of these technologies actually cost less than that. So there I've gone ahead and told you that, we'll have to figure out, what works for you, but, feel free to reach out to the working group and we will be able to actually help you with the right kind of a fit and the right kind of a solution. In fact, actually, when Purnendu, whenever you're joining Purnendu, you can actually talk about some of the vision that we actually have around, providing an opportunity for folks to actually ask a question and see, what we can do, in terms of actually helping them. So let's go to Dattatreya now. Sir, actually, we talked about this. We looked at, some small basic steps that will actually help the factories to open up and in a safe way. So what are your views on this? Is there anything that you would like to add?
See, there are three areas which but this is my personal view. One is MSMEs, and especially I'm now talking about MSMEs in manufacturing and engineering sector, maybe auto or okay. You look at a MSME, equivalent MSME in pharma. On a compliance part, he'll be like say more than 100%. Because it's his neck where, because if somebody comes to know that there is some challenge in his factory, he would not like to take his reputation out. Here, that compliance, we need to bring in, it's like an individual, there has to be an urge to bring in that compliance. It's not sheer by force or anything. So that's one part. Second part is about awareness, which Sanjeev talked about. Awareness is about technology, awareness is about applications, awareness about what's happening in the world. And when I say in the world, it can be Bangalore, it can be Pune, or it can be Hanover also. It's not now, a lot of things are available locally. It's not that we have to go out. Gone are the days when we used to import things, including Sony TV from Dubai. So things are available here. It's not that we have to move out. And third, whatever we are doing for labor or whatever safety things we are doing, we should do it with pride without prejudice. So we shouldn't have like we are forced to do this. So temperature measurement. It's not that we have to force to do it. We have to do it with pride. No, I'm making it a safe place for my people. So that's something which I think we all need to bring in that. That also is an awareness itself across this thing. So that's one part. Second, coming back to technology, from our side, we are doing our bit to develop very user friendly with a great experience, some small tools which can go into factory directly. And which does solve many of their operational challenges. Supervisors are not there. They have to search material. They have to bring in temperature, social distancing. We have a small app which we developed. So these are something which, and there could be many startups who will who would love to support such things. So that's those are the three things I would put that those are essential just now.
Excellent views, Mr. Dattatreya. Let's move to Arvind now. Arvind, your thoughts on this? Your kind of final closing notes.
Yeah, so I think MSMEs are right now from my perspective, challenged on two directions. One is these safety, health, working conditions, and these parts of it. But these are easily solvable, easily in the sense that a few rupees of investment and these problems can be managed or at least monitored, if not managed completely. But the other bigger thing is going to be on the business side. So how quickly business would get restarted, orders would start flowing, material starts coming. So these are the two directions on which MSMEs at this point are challenged. So from my perspective, both these need to be enabled. People coming and going. So somebody raised a point about automation replacing people. Yes, automation does replace people, but also creates new opportunities. And so this will happen, but this is part of growth. If we had not automated, our agriculture would never have been able to feed India. So does that mean that we never automate agriculture? I think that would be a very negative kind of statement. And the same thing cannot be said about industry. We will have to use automation. We'll have to use traceability. If we have to become a global player, we should be able to be open to getting examined from a guy sitting in Germany because he's my client and he wants to see every single bit of data that I produce. So we have enabled our clients to be able to do that so that they can become part of that global supply chain. And if that doesn't happen, if the business doesn't come back, rest of the things are not going to be very, very relevant. Because if I don't have business, I don't exist. And then everything else falls through. So I think MSMEs need to kind of very quickly focus on building this, building collaborations, building resilient supply chains, becoming part of that global supply chain very quickly. This is the lifetime opportunity. I mean, not many of us will face this kind of a lifetime threat, but also not get this lifetime opportunity. So how do we do this is going to be for each one of us to decide and do that. There is technologies. I don't think there's an issue. Affordable technologies are available. So I think that's where MSMEs are. MSMEs are more agile and they are really taking benefit of this. And they are better off if they put the best foot forward, come together rather than not trusting each other. Trust your colleagues, be together, and stay forward from there. Government of India is doing, I think, their bit. They could do a lot more, but well, that's an endless requirement. But I think we have a good responsive government in place. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity, I think we would be ones to be blamed.
Yep. Thanks, Arvind. Thanks, actually, for wrapping it up. So, Suman, we've got some of the manufacturing working group members actually in the audience.
Yes.
So I see this is a wonderful opportunity for us to introduce. So I'd like to first call Purnendu. Purnendu is actually the chair for the manufacturing group. And, me and Purnendu have been actually together for the last 3+ years now, I think. So Purnendu, over to you, your thoughts. As always, actually, you come in with a very strong perspective in terms of how the manufacturing working group can actually help MSMEs. Over to you, Purnendu.
So, first of all, thank you very much, Arvind, Dattatreya, Sanjeev, Lux. As usual, you have been moderating these sessions in such a lively way that it becomes really informative session as well as something one enjoys. And thank you, Suman, for having patience with me and Lux to plan this out. It took a while, but thank you very much.
Always a pleasure for me.
Yeah. So let me just summarize few things and then talk about our working group. I think 2-3 key takeaways from here is that that for large and companies and small medium enterprises, there is a level playing field, and I think it just the large companies have advantage of handling this crisis in a better way than the MSMEs. But I think the crisis has come in more or less in the same impactful way to all of them. So I think there is no distinction from that perspective. The other key thing which came about, and I think Arvind was mentioning that, is given the electronics industry booming and the defense manufacturing booming, I think the MSMEs in electronics and defense industry definitely would find a lot more opportunity to take advantage of this Make in India and Atmanirbhar program. And I think, and there the quality and production efficiency is very, very critical. It's not run of the mill industry that you can deal with any quality or any efficiency and you can survive. So I think it's an opportunity for MSMEs to enhance both quality and production efficiency to cater to that market. And the last piece, I think somebody brought out this regulation aspect of it, that how do we interpret these complex documents and understand. I am very happy to say this, that as part of our working group, we have a dedicated focus on the government policy, and which Lux himself is leading that effort along with Sameep, and you'll get to hear from Sameep as well. I think what I will propose is that we will look at a couple of these policy documents and see how best we can simplify them, and also give some reference or pointers to technology which can help them realize those things. Not giving a specific solution, but some sort of a technology interpretation to how things would be taken forward. Uh, so government policy is one where we also look at voice of industry. So I welcome all the folks here on the audience panel to write to us, like the way you probe questions. Many times you are not comfortable asking questions in public forum. You may write to us saying that these are our concerns, commitment, and we can take it up and see how best we could do. The other thing which we also planning to do is to advise MSMEs in selection of technologies. If you ever uh, are struggling or in a dilemma, you can always reach out to us. We have a very committed and expert pool of working group members, 12 of us, who I think will be able to cater to your requirement. I am very sure of that, given the type of team we have. The last one, I just want to reiterate that this is the lifetime opportunity for us to take advantage what this crisis has brought in. And as all of you have said, if we miss this boat, it's us who are to be blamed rather than anybody else.
So what I was talking about consortium approach and what Lindu just said is that so we try to kind of work together with certain companies of putting a consortium together for an R&D effort, because as you know, the whole investment into R&D in India, as it is less than 1% of our GDP, that's one of the big problems in India. And I think this is a place and opportunity for us to all put together our heads and see that how we can build on to innovation part of it. And where we are lacking, we just don't want, we should not become another factory to the world. China has paid a heavy price for that, being in terms of pollution. I think we should definitely not become a factory for the world, but we should definitely become a technology hub for the world. And that kind of seeds are already there, whether in the IT or engineering industry or medtech industry. But the R&D efforts are not going to be possible for any MSMEs to kind of a fund. However, they can contribute substantially if there are good forums which can take this up. We tried to make some efforts on this. We could not succeed, but if the forum that you lead can take care of this, it is a golden opportunity for us to do that. And IITs and other government organizations, I'm sure, would step in for supporting this. But this is increasing the overall innovation quotient in the entire manufacturing industry in India. I think that is going to be our one big game changer or paradigm change that we can do. So that's my request to you. And to Purnendu, what you said, I don't know, Sanjeev, if you're aware, we have put up a center of excellence in Capgemini's Mumbai office for manufacturing, where we have a tabletop factory.
Yeah.
Actually, few machines working on a table connected to our Connect, and now this can be run virtually from anywhere by Capgemini consultants. And to use demonstrate use cases, people can test it and there. So these kind of a consortium or these kind of a collaborative efforts would go a long way. So just 2 points which we are not covered in the previous discussion. I just thought I did doing that.
Thanks, Arvind. Thanks for bringing that in. Thanks for bringing it in. I think it's very relevant, and just building up on what Purnendu was saying. So it's actually absolutely great.
So I just want to add one more thing, just since it's part of my pitch. So Samarth Udyog initiative by Department of Heavy Industry, Government of India, they have set up 4 centers in India and also a COE at IIT Kharagpur. The 4 centers are at, one is the C4I4 lab in Pune, Second one is at IIT Delhi. Third one is at IISc Bangalore, and the fourth one is at CMTI, which is Central Manufacturing Technology Institute in Bangalore. And any manufacturing unit in India, they are free to reach out to all these five centers and seek support from these center heads. If you want to visit their facility to understand technology, seek support, advocacy, consultancy, I think government has given a lot of funds to develop these. And Mr. Dattatreya is here. His center has developed some fantastic solutions, and now they have shifted to University of Pune campus, where I think it would be a lot more attractive to people to come and experience those in some time going forward. And similarly for all other centers. So please make a note and do take advantage of that. So thank you, Lux, for just pitching in this one.
Excellent. Yeah, no, thanks, Punendu. Thanks a lot. This is really good, and this is wonderful news, right? What Punendu says is that any MSME anywhere in the country, can reach out to these places.
And I think it was really insightful of you guys, of what you contributed here today. I think it was very informative. We kept it really interactive. We tried to get some people on and off, but I think due to some issues in terms of connectivity, which is very common nowadays, we could not do them. But nevertheless, I think this should continue. We have been able to establish a connect with the audience, saying what the working group is doing and what IET think tanks and advisories are all about. Also, what the membership means. So, if you guys can reach out to us, all of the people in the audience, and anyone who would want to know more about what the IET does and what the specific working groups are doing in the specific areas, we would be more than happy to inform you about them, and then put you in touch with people like Lux, Kundendu, Sanjeev, and others who can help you with the next steps. I think with that, I would like to thank Dattatreya, Arvind, Sanjeev, Lux, Kundendu, everyone, and all of the audience who have been a part of it.